It's the 7th of May 2011. It's 5:30 p.m. The place is Aberdeen Gardens, Northwest London. The name of the project is the British Chinese Food Culture Project. The name of the interview is
Deh-Ta, Hsiung. Hsiung Deh-Ta, Chinese name.
Could you tell us more about your experience in the UK? How did you come? Why did you come to the UK?
Well, my parents came here. They came here in the 30s, early 30s, and my father was initially coming to study. He was a lecturer of English in China, and then somebody recommended him to be a associate professor of a different university. And when they looked at his CV, they said, "Mr. Hsiung, we can't offer you this post, although you had a high recommendation, because you didn't have a degree from either Britain or American university or any foreign university." So he sort of, because he didn't think of taking a foreign degree because he was doing all right. He was translating works of Bernard Shaw, James Barrie, and Thomas Hardy. So he decided, all right, I'll go to London to do a PhD.
So he took the whole family to London?
No, he didn't. He couldn't afford. He came by himself first. So because my mother at that time was still studying as an undergraduate. So and then I was number 5 of the fighters. There were 5 of us already. And then when he came to England, he met up with all the authors he translated, so he was he became moving around in the literary circle, and they said to him, "No, you don't want to study, do a PhD. What's the? You can write. Your English is good enough. You can write in English something about China." So he wrote a play called Lady Precious String, which is the Chinese story of Wang Baochuan. And this play became a West End hit. So he made lots of money. So he said, "I don't want to do a PhD, go back to China as a teacher." So he became full-time author. So he sent for the family to come over. That's how no, I didn't come then. This was back in 1936, 34, right?
So when did you come to the UK then?
I didn't come till because the war started. I stayed in China with my grandparents, and so we had to wait for the end of the war. And then it was the Civil War, so I didn't come to England until 1949. By then I was 17.
What was your first stop in the UK?
We came by ship. The ship docked at Tilbury in Kent. It's a Kent or Essex, I'm not sure. Either Essex or Kent. And my father, at that time, he was living in Oxford, so he came to London and came with a friend. They came to Tilbury Dock to meet me and my sister, the 2 of us. And so that's how we arrived on the Boxing Day of 1949. I remember that we spent Christmas on board of ship. It was a P&O liner. And we came first to London, and it was a foggy day, Boxing Day, and being a bank holiday, everything was closed. So London Street, in those days, nothing like now. I mean, food, just a few cars and buses, the double deck red buses, yeah. And we drove up. I remember we drove up. We saw the Big Ben. I recognized the picture, right? And up Nelson's column. I always remember seeing the picture.
Was that your first experience of the English food then?
Yes.
Not only Big Ben, but the first experience of the UK food.
Of the English food, because on the ship we came took 30 days. So it's English food every day for 30 days, 31 days. Right?
Could you share with us the experience, your first experience of the English food? What was it like?
Oh, the first experience it was in Hong Kong while waiting for the ship. We went to had the English meal first time in a friend's house. Well, I couldn't remember what the food was, but anyway. It was quite different to Chinese.
How different was it to Chinese food?
The taste, because the Chinese food, you season them in the wok or in the kitchen. On the table, you don't really need any seasoning. Whereas the English food is bland. You need salt and pepper or whatever. There's a main difference. And also you had to cut it up. The meat is big pieces, you had to cut them. And like the Chinese food, everything's ready to eat. Yes.
When you went to Oxford, what did you study in Oxford and in London?
Well, because I had to go to school first to get my school certificate. It used to be called the GCE. So I had to take extra lessons to learn more English, French, because to go to university you need English and foreign language, French, German, whatever, and classic like Latin or Greek. But for some reason the Chinese classic counts as a classic, so I did the Chinese classics and maths. Now maths I was terrible. I couldn't pass the first time. I retook it. I failed again. We took 3 times. I always gave up thinking I'll never get past. But eventually I managed to get through. But that's a miracle, I think. Yes. So I went to Oxford University. I went to school first in Oxford. Then I went to university.
What did you study?
I studied modern languages, which is a bit mad because English is already a foreign language to me. And then I had to, on top of that, I had to do 2 more languages, where I chose Russian and French.
Excellent.
Now, French I learned at school for 3 years, and I had extra lesson, not too bad. But Russian, I had to start from scratch. So I sat the entrance exam, and they said, well, you haven't done very well, but you showed, we have hope that in 2 years, I have a gap years when by the time you start, in the gap year, you will catch up. Of course, I didn't. I started it, and all my fellow undergraduates, they all been doing national service, so they spent 2 years doing national service and doing intensive course in Russian. So they had a head start. So they all are quite good at Russian, and the French much better than me too, because they had about 8 years.
So you had a lot to catch up.
Yes, it's impossible.
What we're moving on now, and what did you do before working in the Chinese cookery sector?
Oh, that's a long story. Well, see, because after 2 years at Oxford, I decided I couldn't cope. I gave up. I left Oxford to come to London to study art. I went to the Slade School of Fine Art, which is in University College, part of London University. So I studied art, painting, and sculpture. And of course, at the end, when you graduate, what could you do with an art degree? Well, in those days, it wasn't a degree, it was a diploma, because now you can get a degree. But this was back in 1950 something. You couldn't get that degree, it was just a London University diploma. Or you could do teaching, go to school to teach art, which I didn't want to do.
So what did you do?
So I wanted to work in films. So I tried to get a job in films. But in those days, you can't just apply for a job. There's a strong union, the trade union. It was a closed shop because they didn't want to say, we're not closed shop. They said, you apply for a job. They said, are you a union member? We said, no. They said, no, sorry, can't give you the job. You've got to be a union member. So I went to the union and said, I want to be a union member. They said, have you got a job? No. Oh, if you haven't got a job, we can't give you a union member. So it's the catch-22 situation. It's so frustrating. I applied for lots of jobs. They always said, no, sorry, can't give you the job. So what did I do? A friend told me, you try the BBC. They don't need a union. They didn't recognize the union, the BBC. And I applied to work in the BBC. They said, oh, fine, I filled up the form, reference, everything. Then they said, I'm sorry, there's a rule that those days, which is outlawed, is you got to be a British subject. I wasn't a British subject. They said, you can't have. So by then I've been in England for 10 years, because you are supposed to wait 5 years before you apply for the membership. I never thought of applying for the British nationality. So I thought, oh, I better try to get a British nationality. And then meanwhile, I saw an advertisement in a newspaper, a film laboratory. They wanted to recruit a trainee technician, printer, film laboratory, and they didn't require union membership. You can apply for that, and once you got a job, the shop stewards came to me, gave me a long forms, and trying to convince me how advantage to be a member. I said, oh, very well, if you want me, if you think I should join, I will join. So I signed the form.
But what made you change your career path to become a food writer and
that's much,
consultant?
but that's more than 20 years later. And anyway, I was happy working in film, because after I got my membership, I switched to film production, and eventually in the cutting room, I was a film editor. And then I always enjoyed food, enjoyed cooking. So when I left Oxford to come to London, at home, because in Oxford, my mother used to do the cooking. So we had Chinese food every day. I never liked the English food, because I had the school dinners and so on. And then when I came to London, so I had to start cooking myself. And I quite enjoy. Well, obviously in China, I always watched my nanny, my grandmother cooking. I spent lots of time in the kitchen when I was small. And similarly in Oxford, I spent lots of time in the kitchen, watching and helping my mother. So when I came to London, I was so, I wasn't very good, but I could manage, I could cook. And I have an English girlfriend, and she also liked cooking, and she quite enjoyed the Chinese food as well. And we used to entertain friends. And then later, I got married. I married an English girl, and she too enjoyed the Chinese food, and she also learned to cook Chinese. So our friends would say, "Oh, this is delicious. Now, give me your recipe." I said, "I don't have a recipe. I just..." So I wrote down what I knew what it was, and bit by bit. So I had a small collection of recipes, and then a friend of mine who was he worked as an art editor for a publisher. He said, "Look, I can get you your book published as a book. So, but you got to rewrite some of the recipes, make it more accessible to the layman." And that's how the first book was born.
Oh, just wondering, what resources do you use to write your book? Because you have 15 published books. So what resources do you use?
Yes, again, it's a long story. See, the first book took me 3 years to write, and took another 2 years to publish, because of the first publisher, in fact, my friend left the publisher he was working for, and so it didn't get published. And then I sent the book to, or rather the manuscript, to about half a dozen publishers. They all sent it back, so now we got, there's enough books here on the Chinese market, and so on. So nothing. In between, I became interested in wine, so I thought on the market there's no such a thing. There's no book or even article linking wine with Chinese food. Some of the writers say drink tea with Chinese food. That's not so. But you're from Canton, yeah. So the Cantonese drink tea, but not the rest. The rest of Chinese. When I was small, my grandfather, who was a tea connoisseur, he drank tea all day, but never with food. You drink tea before the meal or after the meal, but not with the meal. For the former, for entertaining, banquets, dinner parties, it's alcohol, never tea. And so I wrote an article about what to drink with Chinese food. I sent it to there's a magazine called House and Garden. At the back of the House Garden is a food and wine section. So they liked it, so they published that article. When the article was published, it caused quite a lot of interest, because people never thought of drinking wine with Chinese food. Now, Ken Lo, who's at that time, he's published several books, and he read my article. We knew each other years ago, but anyway, we didn't see each other for some years. Meanwhile, he's published several books, so he read my article. He thought, "Oh, this is interesting, new angle." So he happened to be the consultant for the publisher called Faber, because he published a couple of books for Faber. And when I sent my manuscript to Faber, they sent it to Ken Lo for his opinion. He said, "Oh yes, this is a good book, you should publish it." So that's how my first book got published. So indirectly, thanks to Ken Lo.
So do you know Ken Lo personally?
Oh yes, we met. Yes. Because when I lived in Belsize Park, when I came to London, we were neighbors. He lived a few doors away, so we saw each other quite a lot.
When you're writing a book, what is the most interesting things to you?
Well, first of all, there's the ingredients. There's lots of them. When I first came to England, you couldn't buy soy sauce
Really?
No, there was no soy sauce. And my mother used to use, there's a thing I don't see anymore, called V-sop. V-E-S-O-P, V-sop. Little bit like soy sauce, it's a brown liquid in bottles. And also somebody suggests use Marmite because that's quite a different taste. And there's all sorts of different stuff. So eventually, there's a company called Amoy, you must have heard of. They started to import to Britain, not bottles, but tin soy sauce. And that's how, that was back in the late 50s. And then eventually the bottles started. So in England, in London anyway, there were only about half a dozen Chinese restaurants. And they managed to get the soy sauce from Hong Kong, I think. Oh, that's another thing. Up to 1950, there were just half a dozen, or even less, in London. Of course, in the old Chinatown in the East End, there's a few Chinese restaurants called Good Friends, Old Friends, and so on and so forth. But in the West End, there was the New Hong Kong in Shaftesbury Avenue, which is now is called Mr. Wu's buffet restaurant in Shaftesbury. And there's another one in Wardour Street called Leon. It's still there, but it changed hands several times.
Compared to the time when you first arrived in the UK and what you just mentioned, do you feel that the Chinese food has changed?
Oh yes. Beyond recognition. Being those that I said there's no ingredient. The only ingredient they had, which is different, was bean shoots. So when you order 5 different dishes, each dish has got bean shoots in it, and onions. They use onions, bean shoots, and cabbage. That's about all the carrots. Yeah, also onions and carrots. They all taste the same. Bean shoots. The bean curd, the tofu, wasn't available for years and years, and also then in 1950. British government recognized new government. So the Chinese embassy, the old embassy from Taiwan, had to close down. So they gave all the diplomats the choice of either be paid off a lump sum or go back to Taiwan for new posting. Because the majorities opted to take the lump sum and stay behind. Now in those days, they got the money, they couldn't find a job because there's nothing they could do. A diplomat is not qualified for anything. And somehow some of them use the money to open Chinese restaurants. So that's how suddenly in the 50s, early 50s, there's several new Chinese restaurants opened up. And at first, again, the trouble is the ingredients, all they had was bean shoots, the cabbage and onions and carrots. There's no, you couldn't even get spring onions in those days. Ginger is you couldn't get.
But now it's changed dramatically, as you
yes,
say.
It does.
How do you feel about those changes?
Well, the change is a bit gradual, because what happened was that at late 50s or early 60s, there's an influx of people from Hong Kong to England. They brought along woks, and you couldn't buy a wok in those days either. There's only one shop called the Hong Kong Emporium. tiny shop. They had the dried food, dried goods like Chinese mushrooms, dried bean curd, sticks, and tofu, and tinned soy sauce, and tinned bamboo shoots, and water chestnuts. It's very exotic, right? They're all by Amoy here. And then there's Bombay Emporium. Bombay Emporium also, they started with Indian food. Then they also started importing Chinese things, Amoy and so on. And the Bombay Emporium was importing more Chinese food than Indian food. So they saw that the image, they want to change the name to BE, International Food. The BE is for Bombay Emporium. They put BE International Foods Limited, and they bought up Amoy in Hong Kong, and started importing lots of expanded. So by the 60s, they changed everything. Yeah, and also in the 60s, there was the Chinatown was still in the East End. In London, Gerrard Street, there was not a single Chinese restaurant in Gerrard Street. In Gerrard Street, they had one Chinese shop called Long Feng. Yeah, Long Feng started there, a small one, and then they expanded and more the big ones. And then the Chinese restaurants are opening every day almost.
But in terms of the standard, in terms of the changes in the Chinese
food, there's still bean shoots and bean shoots and tinned bamboo shoots. And
do you think that how popular Chinese food was amongst British people when you first arrived?
People a bit dubious about it, thinking Chinese. And at that time the Indian food was very popular. Of course, there was, for some reason, there were roughly the same time the Indian restaurants and Chinese restaurants, but was until late 60s or mid 60s, there was no takeaways. There were only small restaurants. But then the takeaways started. That was helped to publicize. And I remember when I wanted Chinese food to take home, we had to take our own container to the restaurant, ask them to fill it up and to take home. They didn't have containers for you to take away food. Yes.
So do you think that Chinese food is popular?
Now, yes. You see, about 8 years ago, early 20s, there's an article in the Evening Standard. Oh no, Daily Mail. In Daily Mail, the horrible paper I don't read, but I was told afterwards, there's somebody I know called Charles Campbell. He's a restaurant reviewer. I don't know what got into him. He said, just new statistics just show that Chinese restaurants overtaking the Indian restaurant as the most popular ethnic food in England. So he said, I don't know, he said, people's gone out of their mind. He said, I don't know why they so the Chinese food is more popular. He was really nasty about Chinese food. So I didn't read the article, but the Chinese community in London was up in arms. I said, the complaint to the newspaper didn't get any reply. Somehow they got hold of me and said, look, could you do something about it? I said, well, this is awkward because I know this chap, he's a friend of mine. See? So I said to him, why did you do that? He said, look, when you send your copy in you don't see it. It get printed before you could see the proof. He said he didn't write that it been changed. But then the Chinese people not happy about it. So they got somebody to. They didn't want me to write it. For some reason, they asked me to find somebody to write a rebuttal. And we got someone to.
Why do you think Chinese food is so popular in the UK?
Well, it's cheap, generously. I mean, if you go out to, apart from Indian restaurant, if you go to Italian, French, or whatever, it costs almost twice as much as if you go to a Chinese restaurant, and you probably eat better. It's much better value, and of course it's delicious. Because I always say the Chinese food appeals is because it looks so good, and also colorful, and it's tastes so good, also very tasty, and it's good value, So therefore it's so popular. And you see, a few years ago, or quite a few years ago, I was invited to teach in India. Actually, I know it sounds funny, to teach the Indians how to cook Chinese food. The reason was to help them to promote the tourists. Because the tourists who go to India, they like Indian food. They don't like it. They would not like to eat it every day. So they like to eat something different. And the Chinese is the most popular one after Indian food in India itself. Not only amongst the tourists, I found out when I got there, amongst the Indians too. The Indians love the Chinese food. Because they only love the Chinese food when it's spicy. You must have garlic and chili. Without garlic and chili, they say it's not Chinese food.
Is that how you started your career as a teacher?
Yes. Well, that's also through Keno. Because when Keno opened his first restaurant in 1980, called Memories of China in Belgrave, near Victoria, he also opened a cookery school the following year in 1981, attached to the. He invited me to be one of the tutors. That's how I started teaching Chinese cooking, which is a help because teaching cooking is slightly different from writing. See, you have this rapport. I mean, when you write, you don't know what your readers are. But when you teach, they're right in front of you. So we have this feedback straight away. They ask me questions, so I had to think right to answer.
Most of the students, they have Chinese origin.
Yeah.
Are they most of the
Oh, no,
students
very few. Mostly British or French. Sometimes you get Italians, Spanish even, or Indians, but not very few Chinese. There's one or two because I teach in non-Cantonese food, so we get Chinese restaurant, the Cantonese chef or owners to come to learn Peking cooking and so on, Shanghai cooking. Yeah.
Going back to your books now, in your 15 published books, which one do you think is the best?
Well, first of all, the first one, yes, but then also the latest one called the Chinese Kitchen. That's one of my best. In between, there's not many, I would say, very good. But the most popular of all is the one I wrote for Mark Spencer. That sold far more than any other books I've written, I think.
Why do you think your first book and your latest book is the best?
Well, the first, I don't know. Are you married with children? When you are, your firstborn is always your favorite. I think sometimes, usually it's the kids, isn't it? And the first one is always special.
Mm.
I mean, of course, if you read them, not such a good book, maybe, but it was a good book. And also I revised it a few years later, which is even better, improved it. And so.
What resources do you use then to write your book? What inspired
Well,
you to write those books?
Besides my own, the recipes, I didn't actually invent it. I borrowed, I learned from my mother, my grandmother in China, my nanny in China, my mother in England. Then I gave my mother a few books from publishing in Beijing. The first one was published back in 1958 or something like that. And her friends from Taiwan used to get the books published in Taiwan in Chinese, quite a few. And bit by bit, there's more books from China came out. By the 80s, there's lots and lots of books from China. That's how I got them. Then, of course, I learned when I went to Kendall's cookery school in the restaurant, the chef Bat, who's his father's from Shandong. See, Shandong in China produces all the best top chefs. They're from Shandong. And he actually was born in Shanghai, but brought up in Hong Kong. He was trained in Hong Kong. But when he came to England, he worked first in this restaurant called Golden Duck in Fulham. Then Kendall painted him to the members of China and got him as one of the top chefs, And he was good. So I learned quite a bit from him. And then in Chinatown, I'm talking about 70s now. There was a Sichuan restaurant called Golden Gate. The chef is again from Hong Kong, but he originally from Sichuan. He was. I learned to some Sichuan dishes from him. Yes, my favorite, the four regions of China, north, east, south, west. My very favorite is the Eastern School, the Shanghai School. But unfortunately, there's no Shanghai restaurant in London or in Britain. So there's a few called Shanghai. The chef they are not from Shanghai.
Could this be your future writing plan? What is your future writing plan?
Well, I think I've written more or less enough cookery books. I just got one more book to do, which I call it The Chinese at Table, in which there's recipes, yes, but the majority of the text is about history, philosophy, and technique, which is quite a lot. The publisher also want more recipes. At the moment I'm resisting. They're trying to make it more recipes than the back one. I said, no, there's enough recipe books. I want more background. They say, well, people buy books for recipes. I said, never mind, there's a good enough. So we are still arguing about it. So that would be my last volume on food, I think.
That's a shame.
But meanwhile, I'm doing my memory.
Excellent.
So that it's like this interview. I start from the beginning, with the childhood in China, and how I came to England and gradually, Oxford to London and so on.
What's your favourite dish then?
My favorite dish, it's difficult to say. There's no such a thing. The favorite food, favorite food would be seafood and vegetables rather than meat. But a favorite dish, I can't think of one.
And your least favourite?
Least favorite are, I don't like rabbits, and I don't like pigeons. Otherwise, I eat most things. And I don't, for some reason, I never liked squash, you know, that orange colored. I never liked it. I can eat it, but I never liked it.
What was your working experience like, working for professional kitchens throughout the world?
It's I like it because the help you get is discipline, you know. But it's about what shall I say? You have to be more. You can't be sloppy. You have to be on the guard. Yeah.
Was there any interesting story that you could share with us while you were, during your time working in the kitchen?
Well, again, the most interesting experience, my experience in India, because I went there, had no idea what to expect, thinking, okay. And in the plane, I picked up some newspaper. There were advertising. In the first time I went to India was just in Bombay, only to teach not just the Indians, but the group of the South Asian, people from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, and Nepal, Ceylon, and so on. It's like similar. They're all lecturers of the catering college. So it was under the auspices of the United Nations. And I went there to teach the Chinese, but preceding me was French. They couldn't get a French chef for some reason. So they got an English chef to teach French person. So we met in the hotel lobby. When I arrived, he was about to leave. See? So I asked him for tips. So he first told me, don't drink the water, which I knew and never not. He said, don't eat this, avoid the seafood. I said, what? Because seafood was my favorite. And also, before I met him, I was taken to a Chinese restaurant, see, because I said I like to sample the Chinese food there. And they asked me what you like. I said, I love seafood. So I had lobster, prawns, fish, everything. And then half an hour later, this friend told me to avoid seafood. Anyway, he said, I needed diet. And I must tell you this rest of the story. Then about a few days later, I got to know the students well. Because they're all grown up. They're not teenagers. They're all mature. They're lecturers. They're not the real students. So I treated them like equals. We had a good rapport. But apparently this Englishman, he was there like a big tutor. And he treated them not so. So there were no sort of rapport between them. So they just. But my student treated me, we were joking. They told me what happened to this Mr. Smith. That Mr. Smith was demonstrating brisk, seafood brisk, it's a soup. And there's prawns, and cooked raw prawns. This is back in 1982, I think, 84. In England, you couldn't get the raw prawns. All the prawns are cooked already. And in Bombay, you get raw prawns. And of course, the raw prawns, we all know in Chinese cooking, you have to devein, you take out the black vein, which is, and he never handled the raw prawn before. he started demonstrating, and all the students watching me, thinking, but they didn't want to say anything. They're just watching in silence. So when it comes to tasting, they would make the excuse say we are allergic to seafood. So he said, delicious. Yeah, then that. And that evening, he was invited to dinner by the college principal or somebody. Anyway, after the first course, he excused himself to the bathroom, and they sat there wait for him. He never came out. They had to break the door. He was lying on the floor, all black on the face. They rushed him to the hospital, pumped him out. He spent the next day in bed. He literally nearly died from it. But it's really, you could have been done. So I used to have this as this way in my cooking. I was tell my students, as I cautioned tell, look, I said this, you might think it's nothing about taking out the black thing off the. So sometimes they'll ask me, why do you know that? I say, I'll tell you a story.
Did you cook different food for your customers and for your family?
I suppose, yes, I do, because at home you just cook what you got or what you buy from shop. But when you give a demonstration, you have set out the program, see, certain type of dishes. So it's that's that difference.
So how do you feel about having MSG in your food?
MSG is a controversial subject. See, as you know, in China, nobody question it. It's a natural thing. You see, it's a very modern commodity. Only started at the end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century. Not by the Chinese, but by the Japanese. A chemistry professor in the Tokyo University, Imperial University, discovered that by extract monosodium glutamate from the seaweed, it produces a very delicious seasoning. So they call it, in Japanese it's called Mojinomoto. Mojinomoto in Chinese is called 味之素. And the Chinese call it 味精, the essence of the taste. So monosodium glutamate, which is in lot of forms, different. You get it from not just from the seaweed, but you can get it from wheat, from in fact, the ones on the market now is mostly made from beetroot. I don't know how.
But what's your view on that? Do you think it's a good thing or?
Well, see, the Chinese did an experiment with it, because in China nobody has any after effect. It's only it's first started in the United States, then in Europe as well. They call it Chinese restaurant syndrome. You get swollen gland or something. So the Chinese thought, why is that? Why the Chinese never get that? They discovered the reason is that if you add it to the food towards the end of the cooking, the last minute kind of thing, it's okay. It's when you cook it too long, when you heat it up a high temperature for too long, it gives you this chemical reaction. So if you just add a small amount towards the end of cooking, they shouldn't have any effect on anybody. And now there's lots of people get the allergy to all sorts of things, like peanuts and so on. See, a few years ago, nobody ever had any after effects. I use it not all the time or that often. I just use very, very occasionally. As I say, I don't the last minute, so nobody seemed to have complained.
Which is always a good thing, yes. In your opinion, what do you think would be the future of Chinese food in the UK?
Well, it has gone what they call reform, as well, changes. You had to, because otherwise people get fed up with it, all with the same thing. So they try to invent new dishes. Of course, this in China we have this old saying: "There's nothing new under the sun." Everything is recycle. Maybe you improve, you can change this and that, but you can't invent food. The food is there. The dishes are there. You can invent new dishes, but basically there's nothing much you can do because the ingredients is all there. You cook it according to the way it should be cooked. Because if you try to make it something different, it ends up with a way, in China, it's like a hot starter. You lose the authenticity, not just authenticity, but you lose the character. The Chinese food has got a character. It's,
Can you expand this? What do you mean by Chinese food has this character?
well, to start with, it's not only the way we cook it, it's the way we serve it as well now. See, in the West, you have the old, which is not very old, the tradition of this serving sequence. You have the soup, then you have the white meat, then you have red meat, then you have dessert, you have a cheese at the end. Now that's not, we can't do the Chinese food that way. In China, I know in the restaurant now, they serve you soup to start with, which is wrong. In China, soup never at the beginning. Soup comes at the middle or the end. In Hong Kong, you never serve soup at the beginning. No. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, in China proper, the soup is never served at the beginning. Usually either the middle or the end.
What should be served in the beginning then?
The beginning, well, if an everyday meal, we don't have a starter, we just serve everything on the table. Soup included. The soup in the middle with 4 dishes or 5 dishes around. Then, but in a banquet or formal dinner, then you have a starter. Then sometimes after starter you have the soup before the main course, or you have a cold starter, then you have a hot starter, then you have the soup, then you have the main course, then you have the what they call rice. You see, we because we eat rice every day, so at the banquet we don't serve rice, not at anyway. It's only right at the end. They serve rice as symbol to say, if you're still hungry, there's some rice for you, but people usually don't bother with rice. So it's cold starter, hot starter, soup, main course, or sometimes main course, then soup, then whatever to go with the rice. See, the starter is usually dry, no gravy, no sauce, no gravy. And you usually serve wine or alcohol with it. Then you have soup to clean your. Sometimes some big banquet you have two soups. You have soup after starter, then you have soup after main course.
Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot
Yes.
of food.
The soup usually is clear, not thick. Yeah, always clear.